We're picking up from where they've just finished accusing her of lying about washing windows, and we know she never said that. We know that Kimball had confused this fact.
So I'm sorry if I said I was cleaning window.
No, you definitely said you were.
Okay,
I'm sorry. We're asking you why you're not saying that.
What I remember, I said I was in the bathroom and I was looking through the window and I saw photos. Fix the ribbons of the street.
This is the first time we've heard of that.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I thought I heard about the ribbons.
Okay, we may.
Or maybe I do remember.
I remember hearing about there being grass that they planted and so on and so forth, but I don't think that came from you. That the grass had been seeded, the soil, so they could grow the grass. The grass was cleaned up nice. I didn't even on the road.
I didn't do that grass.
No, we don't. We're not seeing any different pictures. It becomes confusing. I understand.
So the thing that we all didn't hear when it actually happened, but we now have on tape that we can play for you. Do you remember this setting?
As long as we hear the question first, right? You should hear the question.
Oh, we have to play it.
She's still trying to explain to them what she'd said, which is she looked out the window and saw Fotis fixing the ribbons along the driveway. Kimball remarks, while this is the first time they're hearing about this, the fixing of the ribbons. Well, she just said it, but okay, maybe he means that day is the first time they're hearing this. My point is, when accusing her of lying doesn't go anywhere, he switches to basically accusing her of hiding something. His goal is not to understand. Let's talk about whether or not she was hiding the fact that Fotis was fixing the ribbon. Start with what she had been asked previously. She had been asked who was at Mountain Spring, what each drove to get there, about what time they got there, about what time they left, and why she'd gone there. She answered those questions at the time and provided additional information as well. Now the questions are different, and that's the point of an additional interview, to get more information and to clarify information. Ask a different question, get a different answer. Here they had zeroed in a bit more on what people were doing and where they were on the property that hadn't been delved into before. So they're doing it now, and she answered this to the best of her ability. But now she's being accused because she answered their question. So if she doesn't answer, she's hiding. If she does answer, she's lying because she gave more information this time, and, well, you didn't tell us that last time. She can't win. And not 2 minutes ago, she'd been accused of giving unimportant details. If she gives a detail, she's lying. If she doesn't give a detail, she's hiding. Then they bring up the seeding of the grass. She looks confused because she never said anything about that, and it looks like she didn't know any details about the grass seeding. And that's because she didn't know. She didn't have details. She never said anything about seeding grass. Ever. It was Pavel who spoke to the police about seeding grass. Then, in all earnestness, Clabby says, "It's okay, I know it's confusing." But it was the interviewers who were confused, not the witness. And this has already happened several times, where they got something wrong and immediately assumed it's the witness's fault, lie, or mistake. When you're working on a big file, it's no surprise when somebody messes up a detail or mixes up things that different witnesses said. Investigators are human beings too, and I don't think they should be slammed or be characterized as malicious, conniving, evil people because they got things mixed up or misunderstood something or weren't perfectly clear. it's reasonable to say, hey, these are human beings and we should extend them some grace here. It's unreasonable to refuse to extend at least the same amount of grace to the witness. Again, I ask, should the police be held to a lower standard than that of which a witness is being held?
You just back up. So we're talking about, we're trying to get you to talk about Friday the 24th, and whether you saw photos or not, and the whole 80 Mountain Spring activities, which are very important, we think, to this case.
Well, I didn't see photos yesterday. Why are you know, it's not a piece in your mind. It's more like it's a connection. No, that's not it. Stupid. You're trusting. That's understandable. You're it doesn't cause it on my nerves. Sleeping with someone that is thinking of killing someone. Thank you. I don't need you to think about it while you're sleeping with me. He involved you in the cleanup, yeah? That's like even worse. Like, I can't because of that. Got you in trouble. According to what you're telling us, and what could be the case. But I was just cleaning the house. I was cleaning your case. I heard you get arrested.
What?
Yeah, alright. So I don't attach the same significance to that you do.
Okay.
Because you're asking her, and look, I'm not here to get into a disagreement with anybody, but I mean, I remember I was there at the time, and you were asking her about.
You were asking her about Egypt.
I know.
You were asking me.
Why don't listen? You know what the stakes are here, right? So I want you to tell them everything you know about 80 Mountain that afternoon. Okay, so look, I just want you to be clear that it's very important.
Yes.
And I want everybody in this room to know that you understand the importance of it. Okay?
So again, I cleaned part of the house. I didn't clean the whole house. I just cleaned all these pieces that I told you. I cleaned the terrace. At some point, Fotis comes in and he asks for paper towel because he spilled something. I told him it's either in the kitchen or upstairs. He probably went pick up the paper towel, clean whatever he wanted to clean. And when at some point I'm coming out and he gave me the paper towel. And I threw it in the garbage.
And you were throwing paper towel? You used paper towel?
Yes. It was.
What was he using the paper towel for?
He said that he spilled, I think it was coffee. In one of the cars. That's what he told me. I'm not sure if that's true or not. The paper towel was dirty.
What color was the paper towel? Or what color was the dirt in the paper towel?
Brown.
Brown?
Yeah.
I'm being honest with you, having a real hard time believing that you don't know what's going on here.
I didn't know what's going on.
I know that was nearly impossible to hear. What they played for her was a clip from the interview in the lawyer's office. It sounds to me like it was the portion where she'd come to the realization that Fotis had probably committed the crime. Notice how Bowman, her lawyer, is suddenly animated here. To me, he seems less than happy about how this is being characterized. Do you see a theme here running through all of this? He says he doesn't attach the same significance to that as they do, and he says, I was there, I remember this. He knows what Kimball is doing. and it's not good. When Bowman turns to Michelle and speaks to her, it sounds like he's spoken with her prior to this and told her to provide every detail she can remember that might relate to Fotis and any cleanup. She comes out with this about the paper towel and Fotis cleaning something up that she thought was spilled coffee. Why wouldn't she have said this before? Let's set aside for a second that they weren't letting her speak before. Nobody asked about Fotis doing cleanup of anything. They were focused on the timeline and why everybody was at Mountain Spring. Fotis cleaning up spilled coffee would not seem relevant or even memorable. But now, after she has been told that the police think crime cleanup occurred there, Fotis cleaning up something is suddenly very important. Different question, different answer, different information, different way of thinking. Hindsight and additional information versus what you knew at the time. In your own life, have you ever looked back on something and thought about some detail that you thought was minor at the time, or you recalled a detail later that you had thought nothing of at the time, and then later when you had different information, you said to yourself, now that I think about it, and suddenly it looks different, right? Also recall Pavel's testimony. He'd asked Fotis to stop taking his Tacoma, and how he knew that Fotis was taking the Tacoma was that Pavel would find the Tacoma littered with Starbucks cups. And given the lack of evidence at Mountain Spring, that there is at least 1 hour unaccounted for between the time that Fotis brought the Tacoma to Mountain Spring and the time he returned for Jefferson, that he was cleaned up by the time he arrived for lunch, and how he had left the Suburban at Fort Jefferson so Michelle and others would think he was there, and how he left his phone in the office, not the bedroom, with Kent Mawhinney. And there was no evidence of Jennifer being at Mountain Spring at all. It doesn't make sense that he would leave a pool of blood in the Tacoma to clean up after Michelle arrived. He was hiding his criminal activity from everyone except for the unknown male who was his accomplice. I think he spilled coffee. I think he had an ice-cold heart. And by that time, he'd done what he'd done and was mostly focused on getting Mountain Spring cleaned up for the realtor for the next day, because we know for sure that was happening. I know that sounds horrific, and it is, but I think he was that kind of guy.
No, I didn't see anything.
So he hands you a paper towel and he says he just spilled a coffee stain in one of the cars, but you don't know which car. What is it?
No, I believe it was in the Tacoma.
Okay, so he spilled coffee in the Tacoma?
He always carries coffee, and he makes me buy the coffee things, Dixie, whatever they're called in the supermarket.
Where was he standing? Where was Fotis standing?
Outside,
when he hands you this paper towel?
I was getting out of the garage to go towards outside, and he was coming, so we met there.
Where was he coming from? Which direction was he coming?
From the garage, from the outside of the house.
Did you walk out the garage or did
I came out from it's the terrace, the kitchen, and the garage, and there's a door. Have you been in the house or not?
No, I haven't. We have other people there. So. I've seen photos of it. I know the general layout.
Yeah. And being out in the garage towards outside the house where the cars were.
Right by the garage.
The cars were actually out here.
Yeah.
That's when we bumped. I mean, he says here, and I threw it in the garbage that was in the kitchen.
Okay. So where is the?
And the Tacoma was standing here. The Tacoma.
Tacoma, sorry.
Tacoma was here, I believe that Cherokee was here, and the Suburban. And
And where
this
are you?
is the house. I'm here,
And where's close?
here.
Okay.
And this is all like the.
Are the doors open on any of the cars?
I didn't see that in that moment there. And then at some point, Pavel arrives,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I see Pavel. That I believe it's around almost to 5, maybe 4:30. I did also talk on the phone with a lady of the rocks.
Barbara? Barbara?
Yes. And she told me to pick up that they were closing earlier that day because they were slow people. I saw the text that at some point I text with Greg Smith, he's a water skier. I also at some point spoke with my dad because I have calls from my dad.
Okay.
I'm just telling you things that happened, but I'm not exactly in terms of time.
So you left at some point from 80 Mountain Road to go to the rug store to meet Barbara. Is that correct?
But that was after, like, when we were all leaving.
Can we start at the time that Pavel?
Sure.
That's just a very short time before. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What?
Talk about what happened when Pavel.
Pavel arrived, Fotis and I, we were like against the car,
Which car?
the Tacoma.
It's called, okay.
Yes. Fotis was like behind me, like physical contact. Pavel arrives. I think Fotis or Pavel says I didn't see anything or we weren't doing anything. I think something like a joke.
Maybe physically that you two were.
Like, yeah, we were making.
Yeah, I understand.
It's Bowman who keeps things on track. The interviewers had interrupted to ask something else, and Bowman says, wait, let's finish talking about this. Question. Do you think that if Bowman didn't keep things on track there, and as a result, the information about Pavel didn't come out, would Michelle have been accused of hiding that? Michelle describes that she and Fotis were so close together when Pavel arrived that they were making contact, and it was so obvious that Pavel and Fotis kind of made a joke of that. On the stand, Pavel testified that when he arrived, Michelle was standing beside the Jeep and Fotis was standing beside the Suburban. There was nothing in his testimony like what we're hearing here. Do we then assume that Pavel was lying? Or do we assume he was mistaken? Or do we assume Michelle is lying? The answer is we assume nothing. Those are possibilities, but only possibilities. We have conflicting statements, and the fact is we don't actually know why those statements are conflicting. It happens all the time where witness statements conflict with each other. And I'm talking about different witnesses who, in their honest view, are telling the truth, and yet you have two different statements. Most of the time, it does not mean that somebody's lying, but unless it's explored, we don't know why they conflict. And if that detail is not important, it won't be explored. Her statement about when Pavel arrived is corroborated by the prosecution's own evidence. Her statement about calling the rug place is consistent with her prior statements. And notice she talks about text and calls again. She relies on her phone to remember things. At this point, Kimball shrugs and says, okay, kind of like, so what? They want details. And when she gives them, this is his response. When she doesn't give them, she's in trouble.
You two were.
Like, yeah, we were making.
Yeah, I understand.
I believe Pavel started talking to Fotis about the house in New Canaan. I guess, like, how was the day or whatever. And at some point, I have to go because I wanted to go and get my rocks. So I think I said I have to go to get my rocks, and I think we all left pretty much at the same time. I think he turned around because he was parked here, so I think he backed up and he left. He
lives in your afternoon.
He lives in the Raptor.
When you left, okay, where were the cars?
The Tacoma was here. The Cherokee somewhere in here. The Suburban and the Raptor here because he arrived. More or less for what I remember.
So when you leave, what do you say?
I think we all left. I think Pavel leaves first. I'm not sure, but I think Fotis also lives in the Suburban. I live in the Cherokee. Fotis calls me and says, you took the keys for Pavel's car, or you have the keys of Pavel's car.
Not right away, not right.
No, he calls me, I think the call was at 5:16.
And where were you when you received that call?
I was either in the house or driving to the house. I was somewhere in Deerfield, in the road. Deerfield?
No.
In the house. Okay,
Yeah.
when I was in the house. And then I said, well, I'll need you here. And
Why did you take the keys?
the keys were in the car, in the Cherokee.
Keys were in the Cherokee.
The keys were in the Cherokee because he said, you took the keys. And I said, I did? He said, yes, you took the keys for Pavel's car. And
That's not true. That's not true.
oh,
Michelle, that is not true.
I understand that Pavel came here for 10 hours.
okay, well, so then I took the
She comes out with the part about the keys to the Tacoma. She's not trying to hide this. Did she tell them this before? No. Why's that? Because nobody asked. They didn't even touch on the topic. Ask a different question, get a different answer. Nobody had asked her anything about the Tacoma before. In fact, it was her who brought up the Tacoma and told them that maybe they want to look at that. Here she's saying the keys were in the Jeep. This is very interesting. Why would they be in the Jeep? Who put them there? Maybe Fotis? Kimball is saying no. There is an outdated interview technique that involves this, but in that technique, there are other things that are supposed to come before that, and those things weren't done here. I can't be certain if Kimball is just doing a bad job of using an old technique, or if this is simply more of his same old that we've seen all along. That is, the witness is lying no matter what. I will leave it here for now. Trust your gut. I'll see you in the comments.